Jari.
Hi, Yadi.
Hello everyone. We wanted to come in today and share something that's been on our minds in the middle of our conversations, a topic that we're really interested in. And I can start by saying the topic is how to decolonize our parenting. And obviously, as many of you that may know me know that I have three children, three different age groups, 12, 10, and 6 at the moment. So, disciplining in parenting, it is a daily piece for me, and especially in this past year of the pandemic that we quarantined. Mm-hmm. So the five of us have been together every day, all day. And with that, I wanted to bring about to everyone else the benefit that I have with having my sister be a child psychologist, a developmental expert. So for me, it's very easy through my whole parenting journey has been easy to just pick up the phone and call her whenever I have a tough time, whenever I need advice. And whenever I need to just check, are we normal? Are these kids normal? Just she keeps me on track. And I realize that not everyone has someone like that. That they can pick up the phone and call. So I wanted to have this conversation, the conversations that Jari and I typically have, and I wanted to make them public so that you guys can get as much of her advice as I get on a daily basis. So this is why we are doing today.
Hello, yes. So I'm excited to be doing this because we always have talked about what it would be like for people to be listening in on our conversations. And I started parenting so much earlier than you did. My two are 20 and 22 right now. And so I got to try out a lot of these things and kind of retool them and try to tweak them and have learned along also clinically. My experiences have acquired so many more skills from the time that I started and as a clinician. And so being able to share this with you is great. And also, as we have learned more, not just about parenting, but also about the way that our own children have developed their identities as it pertains to race and what we teach them about culture and learning more about our own culture so that we can share it with them. All of the things that we have learned about the way that things were done by those who came before us and the ways that we've adopted some of our parenting strategies to fit the world that we live in, but recognizing that sometimes it doesn't really fit with the culture that we thought we were brought up in. So it's great to have this conversation and to share this with others.
Mm-hmm. And also to explore the merging, right? Because we have lived in two cultures for most of our lives at this point. And even parenting is a merging process for us, for people that live in various cultures, because there's a lot to negotiate with the parenting decisions that we make.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, every aspect of parenting and or of our identities as individuals have completely had to adapt in balance in a way that we now live here, but we have a history in a life and a culture that we, as immigrants ourselves, that we brought with us. And also the fact that our parents continue to feed us those values and cultural norms. And so trying to adapt them while also raising children who were born here, who don't have a connection to our homeland, and who are biracial. And so it's definitely something that has evolved for me as well. What does it mean to be a mom? And that has changed that, what kind of mom I wanted to be went to an infant versus to an adolescent was a completely different thing. And I could grab different information from what I witnessed and what I experienced myself with our parents and with our relatives, our families, our communities. What I was going to be able to utilize was going to be different based on where they were, because what worked for an infant was not going to work for an adolescent, especially not one raised in the U.S.
Right. Mimititi has different meanings in adolescence.
Yes.
So let's start by kind of explaining the words that we're choosing to use, right? Decolonizing parenting. And what does decolonizing mean? The definition that I have is decolonizing is the process of deconstructing the thoughts, preferences, historical narratives, and values that derive from a colonial way of thinking. And I'm going to let you expand on what that means for parenting today.
Yeah, so for parenting, as you said, this has to do with the colonial ways of thinking. And colonialism is about power. And the colonizer had power over the indigenous people that were on the land when they arrived, and they had power over the enslaved people that they brought to the land. And so not utilized. And can you hear me?
I lost your sound for a second there.
Okay, I'm sorry. So going back a little bit. So decolonization means that we are not going to utilize power structures or power differential to parent. So no intimidation, no verbal or physical aggression, no emotional manipulation, no focus on obedience. Right? And when I say no focus on obedience, typically parents are like, what do you mean?
No what do you mean, Jari? What do you mean?
What do you mean? Like, we're just going to let these kids do whatever they want and, nobody's in charge here. It's like, absolutely not. That's not what it means. What it means is we're going to rely on the relationships that we build with our children rather than on the fact that we're bigger or we have control over the things that they want, their money or their toys or those kind of things. And so that's not to say that I wasn't using timeouts and things like that when they were little, but I did move away from that. And I can honestly tell you that I never used a timeout after the age of 5 or 6 with my children. I do not remember using that. So it was very shortly lived, and it was, again, more connected and more of a time in than a timeout. And we'll, over the course of our talks together, we'll talk a little bit about the differences between those things. But I just want to touch on the piece about obedience. The main reason why I don't rely on obedience for parenting is because obedience is about teaching children that to listen to an outside voice without thinking themselves about whether or not their behavior is acceptable, to evaluate their own behavior. It's just do what I told you, just because I told you. Mm-hmm. And don't think about it, don't consider, don't evaluate it. And the thing is that that's going to work for me or any parent only as long as your voice is the most important voice to them. And think about your own life and when what your parents thought or said, this was not as important as what your friends thought or said, or what your boyfriend or girlfriend thought or said. As soon as that shifts, then obedience becomes a problem, because then your voice is not the most important one. But you've already taught them to listen to a voice and obey that voice without thinking. And now all of a sudden you're going to want to, we've all heard it. So if your friends jump off of the bridge, are you going to jump off too? It's like you're now concerned that these kids don't know how to think for themselves, right, that they're just going to do what somebody else told them to do. And so what I'm saying is, if I teach them to think for themselves as I am parenting, then I don't have to worry that they don't know how to think for themselves when my voice is no longer present all the time. And it's not going to be present. My voice is no longer present as soon as they can drive themselves places. I'm no longer there to monitor. Mm-hmm. When they leave for college, I wasn't there to monitor them. Mm-hmm. I had to trust that I had taught them to make good decisions for themselves. And how do I trust that if I've never given them the opportunity to practice that in my presence?
And I think that's part of the parenting role as I see it. And I know that we've talked about it, that since the moment that they're born, you are teaching them to be independent of you. I know when they are babies and just newborns, we don't want to think about that because we couldn't even fathom separating from our newborns. But that's where the phrase cutting the umbilical cord comes in. And life is a lot of those moments of cutting the umbilical cords. And we do a great job as parents if we do these moments of cutting all throughout. So by the time they leave our nest, they are well prepared to fly on their own. And we don't have to stress because we've taught them and we can trust on the job that we have done. So I think that that's
Correct.
important. Yeah. And one other quote that hearing you talk reminded me of from Gabriel Garcia Marquez in Love in the Time of Cholera is you don't fall in love with your children because they're your children. You fall in love with them through the process of raising them. And I think that that's what we mean by that relationship that we build with our children. There are many adults today that unfortunately have severed relationship with their parents,
Correct.
and that stems from what we do today when we're raising our own. So there is a lot of learning or relearning, unlearning and relearning to do in the parenting space, and that is the goal, for what we want to do with this series.
Right. And so we know that we're in love with our children because anybody who's here, who participates, who's listening to this, is because they care about parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And so I already know that everybody who's here loves their kids.
Yeah.
Everybody who's listening to us loves their children. So what my goal is for your kid to also fall in love with you, for your kid to care so much that they're willing to do extra hard things that are hard for them, deny themselves some pleasures over the course of their lives in order to prioritize your feelings. Without you having to be manipulative, without you having to be intimidating, without you having to threaten them,
That's deep.
without that power dynamic. The fact that they will be like, you know what would make my mom happy? What would make my dad happy? What would make my grandmother happy? And I, this is interesting because you said, and I hope that we get to talk a lot more about the relationship that you have with my oldest son. Because you are the closest thing to another mom that anybody can possibly imagine. I mean, you were way more important to him for many months than I ever was. So I hope that we get to talk about that because I feel that the relationship that you formed with him is a perfect example of what it means for a parent to help a child fall in love with them. He loves you madly. To this day, at the age of 22, he misses you and calls you to just have fun.
You're gonna make me cry. That's my baby. That's my first baby. And I think that we were very intentional while growing up, also because of the relationship that you and I have, that our children were not just gonna be one another's children, but our children. And that was important for us to cultivate. We have taken very seriously that it takes a village to raise a child, and we are our village. And to this day, the people that we trust with just sharing our children, I don't have to worry if my children are with you, and I would send them to you in a heartbeat. And same, you've done throughout your children's lives with me. And I've learned a lot through seeing you parent, because you started parenting 10 years before I had my first. So, this has been many, many years in the making. And yes, we will explore it from many different angles that impact our lives, so that it can help and serve others.
Yeah. So that's my goal, and my goal is not, it's not to criticize anyone's form of parenting. So when we talk about things that we want to replace, things that we want to update, we're not talking about criticizing what you've done or what anybody has done before, because even I said I have changed the way that I parent over the course of the years. I have learned more. And so as we learn more, we have to do different.
That's a Maya Angelou quote. When you know better, you do better. And
yes.
We're all figuring this out. They're not born with an instruction booklet. So we have to all figure it out. And you parent different children differently. Like even if you experience with your first one and it turned out, great, the second one might bring its own set of challenges, and you have to readjust in the way that you parent. So I echo that we want to bring up topics to engage parents in this conversation and to have parents learn from the things that they may not have ever heard. There are tips and things that in our conversations that you tell me, like, have you tried this that I never considered to try? So that's what we want to do for other parents. If you know either one of us, it is a non-judgmental space. It is a loving space. And it is a space where you guys will also get to ask your questions, so that we are sure that we are answering to the things that you guys are struggling with, that we may discuss, because your question or the thing that you're living through at the moment, somebody else may be living through at the moment, and we can help one another. This is the essentially this is a virtual village that we're now extending to.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I do parenting groups or trainings with parents in the community, one of the things that I tell them is that my reason for doing them is because I want to improve the community, and families are the building blocks of the community. So any change that we are committed to in this world, in our country, in our communities, in our neighborhoods, and no matter how small, it starts with the family. And so this is where the work has to start. And so this is the beginning of building our own little village to support each other so that each one of us can then take this information that we're learning here and share it with our communities and expand the village.
And at the end of the day, I'm going to say this and I'm going to extend it to my whole family. We love babies and we love children. So it's like we want to see the children of the world, of the United States, of the states that we live in, the communities that we live in, to be happy, to be thriving, to be loved. So at the end of the day, that is our why. That is our North Star, to ensure that every child's life can improve. And if you see any parts or pieces of our lives, you'll see that that is a recurring theme for our family as a whole.
Yeah. And so for anybody who knows us and knows our family, you know that we have amazing parents. We love our parents so much, and they love us so much. And so you're going to hear some things about our lives that are not, and we're not ideal, and that we're going to talk about ways that we have chosen not to duplicate or replicate the way that our parents did it. But that is in no way criticism of them either. We absolutely love our parents. And I'll let you, Yadi, say what you said to me before.
Yes. And when we talk about our parents, we are wholeheartedly sure that in the picking, if we were to pick all over again, we would pick the exact same two that we have. They are gems. They are, the love of our lives and excellent role models of what a parent means, what a parent is. So we wanted to preface all of the conversations that we're going to have with that because as any parent, there are things that you may want to change and adjust from how it was done with you. I think that every child comes to that realization that when I become a parent, I want to change X, Y, and Z. So that is what we are doing here. Sharing how we have changed and that it has been a changing process and an adjustment for the whole family. Part of which I'm sure we'll mention how our parents have also helped us to change for our children. The way they grandparent our children is not exactly the way they parented us. So it's been a learning process for them as well. And I know that they did the best that they could with what they knew at the time. So I have seen that modeled because they're doing different for their grandchildren. So, that is our way of honoring them, honoring the job that they did, and in no way for this to be a criticism for the job that they did, as you will learn as we entail in these conversations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll talk about some of the ways that we can not just address that in ourselves, but also how you can address it with your own parents, who we are hoping for many of you still have relationships with them, and that they are also have relationships with your children and are part of your children's lives. And if so, then they also need to kind of join the program, get with the program, and learn some of the new strategies so that we can all be cohesive in the way that we parent.
Yep. Thanks. So the last piece that we wanted to discuss in this segment is the contents of what we're going to have in the series. And this is going to be a series of about 6 different episodes because we're breaking up parenting strategies by age groups. We're going to have a special topics section for children with special needs. And then we're also going to have one segment where we are just answering the questions that we may have collected from you guys throughout. So that's going to be, we're going to divide that up into 6 different conversations, and you will be able to find that. We'll direct you to where to find these conversations and where you can purchase the whole pack at a very, affordable price, because we just want to make sure that this is accessible, and we're just, covering the cost of bringing this to you in this way.
Yes, I'm excited about that. There is so much that can be addressed in this as far as parenting topics, and I have a whole bunch of books on parenting, so there's a lot, and I'm going to try to condense it to things that I think that are the most helpful. But I don't know each one of you, so I would love to get really great questions that we can answer, and hopefully see if there are themes or topics that are overlapping so that we can combine and answer as many of your questions as we can. So please, if you choose to participate, then definitely please send questions.
And we'll share where to send those questions as well.
Yeah, this will be exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, that wraps up this intro. We hope you enjoyed this part of the conversation and come back for more. Thank you. Thank you, Jari.
Bye.
Bye-bye.